The Lord was like, Tara, I want you to know that for my children, you are in a divine exit. And oftentimes, exits come with disruption. And hey, y'all, welcome to Learn with Tara, where we're here to film our very first episode of Practical and Prophetic, the podcast. At this point, we're going to give some drum rolls just for the name alone. Ain't the name lit? Okay, before we get into it and start to unpack, I want you guys to make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so that every time I release a video, you are notified. And after you watch the video, make sure you like, share, and that's it. You guys, I'm so excited to launch this podcast. Let me just give you a little bit of insight into what to expect here on this channel for this specific podcast. Number one, expect me to cough until I go to the doctor. I have bronchitis. So expect that, okay? It's weird. It's nerve-wracking. But no, on a more serious note, God gave me this podcast, you guys. He gave me this inspiration to come on and do this, and I'm just gonna keep it 100% with y'all. I kind of didn't want to do it because I felt like it wasn't the appropriate time in my life, considering all the things that I have going on and all the things I have to resolve in my personal life. Not only did he give me the podcast, he also gave me a virtual Bible study. And I don't know about you, but have you ever been in a space where God is like, you know God is speaking because you're getting confirmation after confirmation? That's exactly what was happening to me. And I was like, you know what, God, one thing I do know is there's power in obedience. And oftentimes our manifestation and our destiny and our promise is attached to our yes. Not to say that that's the reason we don't just obey to get something from God, but to be quite honest, our obedience is actually a reward for us. Even though it's, it's fulfilling something that God wants us to fulfill, it will eventually impact our lives in that it will pivot us. It's the vehicle to manifestation. So, y'all, I have been in very much deep thought about how I was going to come on here and how we were going to style this podcast. And to be quite frank, it's conversations, you guys. So sometimes it'll be me. Other times I'm going to have guests, and I do have a awesome guest coming on the next few episodes. We're going to be filming in the next coming days. It is a male. It's so funny how we met. We'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, so he's going to be on the podcast because here it's called Practical and Prophetic. So this is all about unmasking what this faith walks look like in its reality and from a prophetic standpoint. Like, we're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about, loss. We're going to talk about parenthood. We're going to talk about, mental health. We're going to talk about depression, stress. We're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about so many different things here on this channel from a practical standpoint. We're going to read the word, or not more so read the word. I'm going to talk about the word in its practicality so that we can really understand, how it's relatable and applicable to our everyday lives in 2022, and beyond, right? But then there's also going to be a prophetic release. Right in this very moment, I don't know exactly how it's going to go, in what order, since this is our first episode, but there will be a prophetic release, right? So I just want to be clear about prophecy for some of you who may not know. So prophecy is a word that is divinely inspired by God. It is literally God revealing his intent, God revealing his will to his children. And it is also foresight and even hindsight that is divine. So, this is not psychic, okay? This is not, we don't do none of that over here. You feel me? It's straight prophetic, biblical this way. So with that being said, I'm going to just jump right into where we are in this time. The word that God has been sharing with me is Exodus. And it's so, even me saying this, you guys, makes me literally want to cry because it has been so much turbulence. I don't know if it's just, well, I do know that it's more than just me because I have people that I talk to, you guys. And literally, when I said yes to God and launched that Bible study, I was asking the Father, like, what should we study first? And I heard him say Exodus. And mind you, that's the story of Moses. For those of you who may be new to the word, I want you to go and read the story of Moses in the book of Exodus. But in Exodus means to exit. And so you guys, we're in like our 4th week of study, and it's just been phenomenal. And you know, the Lord was like, Tara, I want you to know that for my children, you are in a divine exit. And oftentimes exits come with disruption. And sometimes when we're not in relationship with God and we don't understand how the word works and how God moves, we will mistake disruption for the devil, when really that disruption is the catalyst for deliverance. Because when God called Moses to go and address the Pharaoh, right, the king, the evil dictator, synonymous to Hitler, you know, in that time, who was oppressing his people, who had enslaved his people, and they literally were living beneath the privilege that God had ordained for them because of this oppressor. When Moses went to go oppress him, the first thing that happened, you know, I said when Moses went to go oppress him. When Moses went to go address him, the first thing that the Pharaoh did was he retaliated by making it harder for the children of Israel because of his pride. He was like, who are you to tell me who and where these people can and can't go, and what they can and can't do, and who they're about to serve? So with that being said, you guys, they suffered a little bit worse in the beginning, and that bothered Moses. Moses was like, went to God and was like, you're the one that told me to come here and do this, and now these people are experiencing a worser thing because of me opening my mouth to advocate for what's right. First of all, let's unpack that. God used Moses to advocate on behalf of somebody else. One thing that I am strongly just really like into in the sense of who we are as believers is we can't just be praying. We have to be prayer in action. And this is a time where God is calling us to be bold, courageous, and the mouthpiece for whatever assignment he's given you. That may be in your personal home. That may be in your in your business, on your job. It is not to sit back in a cowardly sense whenever there's an appointed time to go into war. Now, mind you, Moses didn't go into war in a sense of fighting the king with swords. But as you keep reading the story, God used Moses in a miraculous way to inflict plagues on the Egyptians and the Pharaoh king because of his stubbornness and his unwillingness to just resist and not want to let these people go. So again, God used Moses as an advocate. The prophetic word in this hour is that God is sending an advocate for you. That advocate may not even be in the form of a person. It could be a physical person, but God is advocating in the places where you're bound. Now, mind you, again, we're talking about bondage from our perspective. We're not bound in chains today. But let me tell you something. I just came out of one of the worst, most tumultuous seasons of depression in my life. And let me just keep it a buck with you. As a woman of God, y'all, as a believer, I've always battled with depression, but I've always felt like I've had a foothold on it. But y'all, after this season, man, it was just so tough to the point where, oh my God, oh my God, it was just, have you ever experienced something that, I mean, it's just like you pressing and you moving and you fighting, you know what I'm saying? And you just can't fight no more. And that's exactly where I just found myself just weeping all the time. In the middle of the night, I would just wake up weeping, you guys. And one of the things that I said, the unfortunate things, but now looking back, it was a blessing, is I'm the kind of person where I'm work. And I know how to, I don't like to feel pain. But in this particular season that I'm pivoting out of, things slowed down in a slight sense where I had no choice but to, get into a place where either I was going to fold or I was going to tap into the victory that God had ordained me to tap into. But I didn't feel led to fight in a sense of, going into spiritual warfare. I just felt a cry. That is synonymous to this story, this Exodus that we're talking about in the Bible. It's just so, God is so strategic. He's so good in that, even before he inspired me to launch the virtual Bible study and go into Exodus, I was already having an Exodus moment. So that story, God parted the Red Sea and God used Moses. That miracle and that move was predicated on the cry of the children of Israel, on the cry of his people. Literally, the children of Israel were crying out, and God responded. He heard their cries. And so there's power in your tears. You might be in a season where you just weep randomly. So somebody out there that's going to watch this podcast, you might just be weeping randomly. I want you to know that God is taking note, and God is moving, and vindication is coming for you. Now, like I said, we're not in physical chains, but some of us are chained in relationships. Let's just get into that, because y'all, this is a topic where it's slightly controversial through the lens of faith, but I've had a personal experience. I've had personal experiences, and I've also seen how the Lord has sometimes disrupted relationships that are bondage. You know, I ain't gonna lie to you. I've been involved in a situation before where, have you ever been in something where you felt like you're just suffocating? And it has nothing to do with like preference. You know what I'm saying? Like something shallow, or, you know, something that is just like, oh, I'm a different person. I don't, you know, but I'm just saying, just suffocating. The thing that was, you know, so sometimes we can be in places that were not meant for us to make our abode. That could be spiritual, relational, financial, whatever, emotional. It could be in your job. It could be in your business. With the children of Israel, God was delivering them from Egypt. Egypt was not their home. It was a foreign land. And not only did he deliver them, he was bringing them into a promise. So God is very thorough, and I want us to really understand this, especially now, being that the word for us in this specific podcast, for this specific episode, is we're in an exodus. Anytime there's an exit, when God is doing performing an exodus, right, there's always an entrance. So if he's ever going to disrupt your life and bring you out of something, it's only to bring you into better. Because as we know, if we keep reading through Exodus, after, you know, God used Moses to part the Red Sea, and they moved past, you know, all of that. I'm skipping a whole bunch of it because the intent is for you to go and read. If my Bible study, we go deeper, you know, chapter by chapter. But they eventually, you know, God leads them. He's leading them into a place called Canaan, which was the land flowing with milk and honey, which was the promised land. It was abundant. So for someone, your promised land might be this marriage that you're going to go into. You know, your promised land is going to be the abundance of your peace because you have none. Your promised land is picking up your purpose because you lost it in that person or that thing or in that addiction or in that emotion. My God, I know all about it. Trust me. Your promised land might be your pivot into a new state, into a new place, right? Because where you are is not where you're supposed to be. And so there's a disruption that comes with deliverance. And if not careful, we will be praying against this disruption when really we just need to surrender to it. And the beauty in this story is, even though in the beginning, Moses's, you know, confrontation with the Pharaoh cost them something, the children of Israel something in the beginning, it was just for a short moment. I want you to know that this disruption that you're experiencing is just for a short moment. It's temporary. It's not the end. It's not final. It's not over. Oh my God. But it's in your cry. Somebody has been saying, you know what, Lord, you know, you've been trying to fight your way through this. You've been trying to read your way through this. Oh my God. Book after book after book. You have been trying to YouTube your way through this. You've been trying to church service your way through this. You've been trying to vent your way through this. You've been trying to counsel your way through this, and it's still binding you. This thing, whatever your thing is, it's still binding you. Maybe it's the oh my God, maybe your thing is your inability to just close the door on it, your inability to just walk away from it, your inability to say yes or say no, whatever that thing is. You've been trying to do it all these ways, but in this hour, your deliverance is going to come through your cry. One thing that we should know about God is he is a safe space. And that is why, y'all, let me just keep it all the way 100. That is why I serve this man. That's why I serve God, because he's a father. You know, I accepted salvation when I was 19 and I am 35 today, right? Single mother, divorced single mother. Excuse me. Entrepreneur, work in the tech industry, all that. And, you know, back in the day when I accepted salvation in a very unorthodox way, that's another story for another time, because the Lord saved me dying, literally, okay? And what I have learned over those years is my perspective of him definitely has been enlightened, where I used to just see God as God. But as I grew in my relationship and over time, I had the epiphany that he really is a father. And for me, that wasn't a foreign ideology to adopt, because I do have my real dad, thankfully. But I know for some of you, it may be hard for you to process him that way, because you may not have experienced the love of a father in the earth. So it may be daunting, or it may be rather complex to really, you know, tap into your relationship with God as seeing him as your dad. But I want you to know that he is a father and he is a safe space. And y'all, me coming out of this season of depression, let me tell y'all something. It was so bad that a prophet from Africa, I just met the man on Instagram. A prophet from Africa, literally, like, don't know nothing about me, don't know me from a man in the moon. He reached out and was like, daughter, I had a vision of you. Like, this was like 3, 4 in the morning. God showed me that you were in one of the worst storms of your entire life. It was so dark and the ship was he was like, I'm coming to pray for you and undergird you in prayer. My good God. Hallelujah. And that man prayed for me. Someone else called me and was like, sis, normally that's me. Normally I'm that friend. But somebody was like, sis, I don't know what's going on, but God put you on my heart. It was that heavy. So in that season of darkness, I can only imagine that the children of Israel in Exodus, they were also in darkness, having to, you know, be enslaved every single day, work, you know, for hire, work for what they couldn't keep, live beneath their means, be oppressed. I know that was turbulent. So in my season of bondage, I kept reminding myself, even in my tears, that at the core of everything that's happening in my life, and I want this to bless you, is that God is my father and he has my best interest, which causes me to trust him in the midst of the disruption, knowing that the disruption is not my destination. What is happening now in your life, it's not your destination. It's just a vehicle to get you to the place of destination, okay? Now, I want to go back to something. You know, so that's how I've been able to, you know, heal through this, right? That's how I've been able to grow through the season of disruption, and just relax and release and let the stuff happen. Let the stuff hit the fan. Just let it hit the fan, because God doesn't leave a work undone. We're in an exodus in this hour, and it's uncomfortable. Oftentimes an exodus comes with unfamiliar territory, and that's why okay, let me go into this, y'all. I feel like I'm skipping so much. I just wish we could just read the word and just go into it, but let me just tell y'all, after, this is a spoiler alert for those of you who don't know, after the Red Sea moment, Moses is, you know, the Pharaoh done died. Okay, they're they're out of Egypt and they're going into the direction of Canaan, but they had to go into wilderness first. The Bible says that there was a shorter route, right? There was a detour for them to actually get to the destination. It was a shorter route, but God would not allow them to take the shorter route. Number one, because of their mindset. They still had a slavery mindset and they were too weak. They just came out of something and they were weak. And if they were to, go this shorter route and face a war with another nation, they would just turn back to bondage, to Egyptian bondage. And that would just be it. They wouldn't, they wouldn't go far. And so he took them through the wilderness. Okay. So you might be experiencing a wilderness and you're looking around like, God, what is going on here? And the wilderness, one of the points of the wilderness is to process the old you out of you. Because in this next season, and the thing that God is doing for you next is going to blow your everlasting mind. The land flowing with milk and honey was a land that the giants occupied. So these people were 7, 8, 9, 10 times bigger than them. So that means everything was larger than life. And I don't want this to sound like a unicorn message where, hey, this, like, all of a sudden, things are going to blow up and everything's going to be all good. But in a sense, it is. It's about to be all good. You're coming out of this thing. But the reason why it's taken a little longer and there's been a delay is because God knows what's ahead of you. He knows what's ahead of me. And as strong as we think we are, and as anointed as we think we are, and as much as we know, God knows our weaknesses. And the one thing the enemy wants us to do when God is bringing us out of something is to go back. But I'm here to let you know today, don't go back. Don't go back and pick up that mindset of depression. If God has delivered you and you have already crossed the Red Sea, and somebody has prayed and said, God, I need you to show me, is this or is this not? And he showed you. Once he showed you, that's your Red Sea moment. That's your opportunity to come out. Just don't go back. Don't be guilted back into something. Don't be intimidated back into something. Don't be complacent back into something. Sometimes complacency can call your name. Complacency itself is bondage. Sometimes the distractions, that is the bondage, right? Don't go back to the distraction, right? And so in this hour, there's something ahead of you that's greater than what you are in right now, and it's beyond what you and I can imagine. And that's my word too. Okay. So from a practical standpoint, part of my healing and my deliverance out of that depression and out of some other things that were going on in my life was me coming to the recognition that, y'all, your girl ate her way through some depression. And I'm talking about with food, because I love me some food, honey. No, I don't. Okay, you know what? Speak those things as that are not as though they are. So I don't love food. I like it. Okay. And so your girl, she been eating. And I had gotten the biggest, in my life. Ooh, y'all heard that ghetto smack? Did you? Woo, child, that's how you know you big. Honey, I was big and still am. I'm losing now. And, once I recognized the disruption in my life was a move of God, and I surrendered to the disruption and I made the pivot I needed to make, I knew that there was still work for me to do internally. And one of those things was to address this weight. It's not for me. And even though this is a practical thing, we're told this is not Bible, okay, this is a practical word. When I realized how much weight I gained, I realized that I had gained a whole nother person, a whole nother personality. When you're overweight, you're actually overweight mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. You're overweight. And so I took control back. And what I've been doing, you guys, is I've been really consistent in, number one, knowing that exercising and proper eating habits really do combat depression. But also, one of my promises, and this is for the ladies out here, what I know that God has for me in the future, I don't know when, but I know it's not going to be some years from now, is my king, on earth, my destiny partner, my mate. And I'm not like a deeply insecure woman. Of course, I have my insecurities. Yes, I do. I sure do. But it doesn't rule me. But I was like, man, okay, well, I need to be in preparation. Like, I'm already in a space of healing for myself, in a space of growth for myself. I'm in relationship with the Lord. I'm getting my mind, addressing those antagonizing thoughts, those threatening thoughts, those accusatory thoughts that the enemy would come and I'm addressing all that. I'm in my prayer, but I also need to be making preparation for what it is that I know that is coming for me, for my promise. And that is not to say that where I am today, I won't attract him. I'm not saying that, but I firmly believe we should always be in a stage of progressing ourselves and those and our environment and those around us.
I don't need